5 days later, Tony stood in his room, unpacking. Paint had dried on all the walls, the floorboards had been repaired or replaced, stained, and lacquered. 2 pieces of furniture were already in the room, a bookcase he had built when he was younger, a small desk, an office chair, and a floor lamp. There were also many boxes, opened and unopened, which filled the room like refugees, a great mass huddled in such a small space. Most of those which were open were clearly books, some medical texts, some other scholarly subjects, but a lot of fiction as well. Among the open boxes were a few audio discs, videos, and a computer's various accessories, which he was currently in the process of connecting to the main unit. The door was open already, but Eve still knocked on it lightly, with a set of knuckles closest to her wrist. Cradled in her left arm was a clipboard.
"May I come in?"
she asked politely, standing at the threshold. Technically, since the manor itself all belonged to her, she would have just entered anyways, but Tony had thus far done a fair job, especially in fixing his own room in such a short time. She didn't want to lose an employee like him over something as inane as impatience and a lack of privacy. Thankfully, he wasn't too integrated to his task to not hear her, and he replied promptly, "Of course, Hannah." Eve took a couple steps closer, but halted due to the number of boxes in her way. It wasn't very far within the room, but it would have to do.
"Tony, I know you still haven't unpacked fully yet, but I thought now would be a good time to go over a few things with you."
Tony looked up from his task and back at her for a moment. "Such as?" Eve looked down at her clipboard, almost hiding behind it. What she had come to his room for was not a grand request, but it was important to her personally, and of relatively short notice. She hoped he would be up to the task and the detail it required.
"As you know, you were hired on as caretaker for the manor and grounds. Although my family inheritance is enough for me to live in comfort for the rest of my life, it is not enough to keep the manor in good condition, and it has deteriorated some since I took possession of it. I cannot afford to lose this place because I'm not knowledgeable enough to constantly repair it. For that reason, I am renting out several of the rooms to tenants, such as yourself."
She skirted the issue as she read from her notes, careful not to be too stiff, but Tony looked curious. She continued.
"I wish to hold on to this building because of its memories. But since my family is gone, I would be adverse to leaving it empty. Hence the tenants. Between you, Morty, and I, each candidate shall be chosen for the housing. I do not wish to fill this place with vagrants. In addition to the basic upkeep, some of the tenants may request modifications to their rooms. That shall also be your duty. Keep the tenants and I pleased, and you will have a comfortable employment."
Tony raised an eyebrow and nodded slowly, crossing his arms. "I understood that would be part of the arrangement when you interviewed me, but why are you emphasizing this now?" Eve noticed the guarded body language and visibly winced, albeit slightly. This wasn't going as smoothly as she had hoped, perhaps a more direct approach.
2 days ago, an old friend of mine and pen pal let me know that she would be moving out of her current domicile, and finally, after much discussion, took me up on an offer I had previously given her. She will be arriving here in 2 weeks. Due to a recent injury, she's in crutches and may need some assistance, even though she'll deny it stubbornly. Aid her as best you can."
So far Tony remained silent, waiting to hear more. Here was the hard part.
"She requested the room closest to the pool, which currently has several burnt floorboards, a broken door, and a wall where another used to be when she last visited. I would like you and Morty to prioritize the tasks on this list over your other duties, and have the room up to specification prior to her arrival."
There, she had said it. Tony had himself been in the room while examining the manor and probably knew how extensive the damage was to it. Not knowing how long such repairs needed, she thought it would be a difficult task, even if he had 3 weeks. He could do it, but he would definitely need Mortimer's help to do it in less time. Then again, she didn't have as much expertise in repairs as he did, as was evident from the current state of the manor. Tony cocked his head in the same way he always did when he was thinking. He closed his eyes and thought about which room she had mentioned. If what she had said was the only damage to the room, he would have been able to fix it in about a week. As it was, Eve hadn't known about several other things needing work. The electrical outlets in the room no longer functioned, the line needed to be tested, the fuse box checked, and new outlets after it had been painted and other repairs been done. There were several stains on the ceiling, some from the smoke of the fire she had mentioned, some of unknown origin. He still didn't know what had caused the fire, but that had been some time ago, and not something he needed to concern himself with currently. One of the walls had several holes from nails that had long since been removed, and ants came out of them, as well as a crack in the wall that had once had a door in it. The colony could be killed slowly to be effective, or quickly and all cracks sealed to keep them out. A few traps and poisons left inside the wall with them to drive them out or kill off the colony. Thankfully, he hadn't seen any evidence of mice or rats, but he'd know for sure after he was done tearing up the walls. That much in and of itself would take a week to deal with. Replacing the walls and painting them, replacing the floorboards and staining them, replacing the door, that could take another week or more. Plus who knew what troubles he might encounter in the repairs. Then again, if Mortimer were able to aid him, he might be able to pull it off. He opened his eyes slowly and extended his hand, taking the clipboard from Eve and reading it over. From this list I take it you wish her to be more permanent resident? Some we may haven't. Truth be told, half of what he knew were problems with the room could easily be window-dressed, so to speak, and dealt with in a manner to conceal the room's problems, at least for a few months. He didn't get that vibe, though. Somehow this seemed important. Not that he would have wanted to skimp on his work and possibly be terminated later due to a tenant's complaint.
Yes, she is and has always been my closest, dearest friend.
Eve nodded, barely in his peripheral vision. So that was it. He handed the clipboard back to her and returned the nod. I'll be done immediately. The days passed, and the days turned into weeks. The work had been tiring, and Mortimer had been a slow but patient learner. The room's work had been finished, just a short 2 days before the deadline. Eve had examined it and found it more than satisfactory, wrapping her arms around him in a hug which he awkwardly returned before she hugged Mortimer as well, and rushed off in a girly excitement, saying something about contacting her friend. Her friend, as it turned out, wasn't fully packed yet, but would be coming sometime within the week. Eve was a bundle of excitement, and Tony and Mortimer found themselves both trying to avoid her through work, their moods and speech so fluctuating as to make even a slippery lawyer trip over his own tongue. Currently, Tony was standing down a railing on a balcony of the second floor. It was directly above the garage, not part of the original manor, and large enough to hold a small ceremony of sorts if one wished. It was mostly empty, a single table with an umbrella near the door, 3 chairs encircling it. The second floor itself was mostly a wreck. Evelyn's room had been shoddily repaired, and she would eventually want it fixed as well, but not until the rest was done. From what Eve had said, although her parents had started some minor repairs to the manor 6 years ago, before their demise, and she and Mortimer had made some since then, it had been in a total state of decay and disarray for nearly 15 years in total, perhaps more. She wasn't exactly sure. It had belonged to her grandfather before her parents. The stairs leading up to the second floor were stable at least, though a bit noisy. The stairs to the third floor were a different matter, and there was no way he was going to ascend those before replacing them, which he had done yesterday. The third floor was smaller, but mostly like the second. Empty, spacious rooms with dust and cobwebs everywhere. Surprisingly, the third floor had less damage than the second, excepting its stairs. When he asked Eve about it, she shrugged. Her grandfather's wife may have died before Eve was born, but her favorite room had been at the top, and he made sure to keep it in good condition personally because of that. Due to all of his traversing up and down the stairs, they had gotten a fair amount of wear, and he dropped something heavy on them once before he had gotten too sick to continue ascending them. Perhaps that was what had broken them, time making them less and less stable as time wore. Perhaps that was what had broken them, becoming less and less stable as time wore on them. She couldn't be sure, but Tony surmised that he could very well have done it. The second floor still needed quite a lot of work, but at least the third wouldn't be so much. The slats were broken by a strange sound piercing through them. He put up a hand near his forehead to block out the sun as he looked towards the source. There in the roundabout, was a large van, commercial, with a giant artificial fish on the roof. Tacky, but effective marketing. The annoying horn sounded again, more like someone strangling a bagpipe than anything else. He picked up his sandpaper and put it back into one of the side pockets before turning and walking back into the building. Strange. Perhaps the driver had arrived at the wrong address? He walked casually to Eve's door and knocked on it.
Yes? What is it?
She answered from within. Did you order some fish for delivery or something? There's a big van parked out front. Seconds later, her door opened slightly and she looked up at him with confusion and expectation. She was still anxious about her friend.
Fish? What are you...
The voice trailed off. She looked tired. Yeah, fish. On the side it says Lindell's. A look of realization widened on her face, and she threw open her door as she interrupted him.
Lydia!
She started to run past him, grabbing his hand on the way.